Beth, why don't you start? Sure.
So I would say that, I don't think it's new in a small community to have board members that are either relatives or close with people. I think that you take an oath as a board member and you honor that oath, and you don't cross those lines, you don't have those conversations. One of the things I dealt with a lot as a president was having to represent, teachers, faculty members, but maintain a level of confidentiality and respect for everyone. In my line of work, it's not uncommon to have to, be careful in how you handle things and sensitive, and again, confidentiality. It's in the best interest, and you have to remember what role you're serving in, and what's in the best interest of the district is certainly to make sure that you don't cross boundaries. I also think that there's, kind of a chain of command. We talk about this all the time here, and they have resources and ways to express their concerns through the district. There are liaison meetings that take place between the associations and the board, and those chain of commands would be, that process, making sure you've gone to those directly in charge of you, then through, the principal, to the superintendent, and if you're not having success there, taking it to your association in a liaison meeting. So putting people, rerouting them, to go through the proper process and do it the right way, I think would be a really important in setting those boundaries. And I think it's healthy and in the best interest of all.
Thanks, Chris. Keith?
That's pretty easy, really. I've been dealing with that for 25 years. My wife's been a teacher here. Comes home the end of the day, hard day. How's your day, honey? Well, there's this, and this. I can't tell you about this, though, because that's not appropriate. It's not legal, and I shouldn't do it. It's same thing on the board. Certain things you can talk about, certain things you can't, and you just have to respect that in life, and it's part of the job. And if you can't do it, then you shouldn't be here. And we all have ties. It's a small community, so our kids are here, we're here, spouses, other family members. I mean, it's just something you have to respect and honor. And I don't think it's that hard, quite frankly. It's something we do.
The state education law makes it very clear that spouses, children can be employed by schools in which board members are participants. So that there isn't any legal prohibition to this, and that's really, Corey's question goes beyond the fact that it's quite acceptable. In fact, there's history in this school of those kind of relationships over the years. There is a code of conduct that a board member has to take. There are Robert's Rules of Order. There are protocols for defining recusals, and these are not complex issues. There's the ability of any board member to raise a question if it's a concern. But I think overall, when you look at the operation of not-for-profit boards, this is an acceptable pattern of courtesy and awareness of appropriate decision-making as a group. So I would not view this as a problem, as it has apparently never been historically in this school over the last several decades.
A second question? Yes.
Thank you, Maureen. I know several people.
You are.
Oh, I am. I am Jean Chifano. Thank you very much.
And you live?
And I live on Beaver Meadow Road in Cooperstown, Middlefield. Thank you. Several of the candidates did talk about challenges. So, and I think it was Dr. Streck, maybe Mary Beth, and maybe Matt mentioned, but what do the other candidates feel is the biggest challenge going forward in the school district next year and the years after?
So we'll start with the individuals.
Repeat the question. Repeat the question, please.
They couldn't hear the question, Maureen.
Yes. Our previous respondents did talk about some challenges when they responded to the other question. Jean asks if the other candidates who didn't respond would respond to challenges they
hiring new administrators and retaining the talented folks that we do have here so they can continue making progress in leading this school forward. And I think that the sort of larger term and perhaps more ominous challenge that we face is the combination of state policies that are leading us towards increased expenses and the threat of decreased revenues in state aid. These are things over which we don't necessarily have a great deal of control as a school district, but what we can do is plan for and anticipate possible scenarios so that when things do happen, when we do need to spend enormous amounts of new money to purchase electric school buses, or when state aid is cut significantly one year to the next, we have some room to maneuver without a great upset to our finances year to year.
Thank you, Patrick. We'll ask Matthew then.
I mean, I think building on what Tony and Patrick had said earlier, I mean, I think a lot of our problems in the school district right now really tie back to communication. Something that I think that we've been lacking in over the years, but there's a lot of hearsay out there. There's a lot of people that are upset about the effects of what has happened around here, but they don't really understand the causes. Some of that is, you know, as Patrick had mentioned, there are a lot of restraints put on us about the state. Something like the changes in the logo and redoing the gym floor is a big one that everyone gets really upset about, but they don't understand that this wasn't a solo act of a superintendent or the board or a small party. I mean, this is really something that we've been instructed to do and we need to make the best of. So I think that we really need to get in front of these things, especially now with, you know, where we're at with having a single principal and having the new dean of students brought in. Honestly, I think we're making the best of a difficult situation. I think the whole board as it stands right now would like to see another principal brought in. I think that we've been tried to hire for a vice principal for several years prior to that. And I think somehow the spin is out there that, you know, we're trying not to fill positions as a cost-saving effort, and that's really not the case. The candidate pool is not there. The recruitment, the drive to get people to relocate is not there. And a bigger issue, you know, across the country is that people are fleeing education. And that's very unfortunate. And I don't think that the community really understands all the hurdles that factor into the problems that the school district are facing right now. And I think that we need to do a better job communicating those so that we have more support from the community and so that we can all collectively work to solve these problems together.
Thank you, Matt. Tony, you're up to answer about challenges you foresee.
Well, I mentioned communication, and we really had made some strides this year. They have to continue, and that's primarily having very frank and intimate conversations through the liaison with teachers, because that has been a real conflict, place of conflict, and I know that's spilled out into the community. Financially, we're at I'm not going to get on a soapbox, but this business of electric school buses is so far out of the realm of rationality that it's staggering, and that is being imposed, and I'm really hoping to see the legislature. There's already a bill to put the halt on this thing, but I think people need to understand what that's going to do to their not only school taxes, but the notion that this millions of dollars is going to be placed on people's property taxes, and it's just not right. Educationally, I think we have a very high aspiring staff. We have to work with them in terms of getting a good principal. I've been on the hiring committee reviewing and interviewing, and it has really been discouraging. We've got 3 rounds of resumes and interviews, but we're working on it, and it's probably going to require that we offer higher salaries to get people to be willing to move to these small rural districts, shrinking populations, et cetera, et cetera.
Tony,
So those are the
you
big
have about
ones.
15 seconds left.
I'm done.
Wow.
There are lots of problems,
Thank
but
you.
they're all doable.
Okay, thank you.
Maureen.
Yes, you may have 2 minutes.
I just wanted to add, because I did, speak a little bit to challenges, but, having a little insight, being here and working with the staff, and then also working now with neighboring districts, and collaborating really with leaders from neighboring districts for the 8 years that I was as a union president, I will say that there is, looming, there's going to be a shortage of, or there already is a shortage of educators and administrators, and we have, as a district, have been quite fortunate, truly, to have positions filled that we have when we looked at neighboring districts. That being said, we've lost, not only have we had a turnover in administrators, we've lost a great deal of educators, good educators here, including Cooperstown graduates to neighboring districts, small rural districts, and I think we really have to look at these issues and look to retain these individuals, as well as attract the people to come to this district. And it really does go down, or come back to communication, morale, all of those things. And I do think that's one of the things that I worked in closely with leaders, the board, to improve during my time here. I think we've made some positive moves in the right direction. We're definitely headed there, but I don't think that we're there yet, and that is something that I think continues to need to be a priority as we have these declining numbers of people going into education. And the job for all is just tremendously challenging, and these people need support in these roles. So, that is my interest to support, and also to help bring those, people together, and to help make us a district that attracts the educators and administrators that we certainly once were at a time.
Would any other candidate who hasn't spoken to this question wish to speak? You may, you will.
I would just suggest that these topics that have been brought up, communications, finance, demographics, I mentioned artificial intelligence and technology, employment, recruitment, these are, I think, as Matthew and others said, are not unique, but they are still our problems. And the approach that I would see as possible for us, which is not to say much of this is not being done, is to create that inventory of issues about which we have the highest concerns, perform the analyses that need to be performed, and then that provides a basis for the communication, pro or con, success or failure, opportunity or not, that I think would facilitate a lot of our ability to move forward together.
Thank you. Any other candidate interested to speak? Keith?
Thank you. I agree basically with what everybody said here, and the finances, they're gonna be tough. The state keeps putting forth what they're gonna do. We have to deal with it, adapt, plan the best we can, spend money wisely. Some things that don't cost money are like developing like the culture within our school community. So we have a lot of great people that work here. We want to really keep them here. People are going to go for various reasons, but if they leave because they just want to go somewhere else and don't want to be here, we want to try to prevent that the best we can and make this a place that someone would say, oh, that's a great place to work. They're not going to pay me as much as this other school district. I want to be a part of that culture, and we can attract people that way, because the recruitment's a challenge. It's hard to find people, and there's just not as many. This competition for them is great. So things we can do, it doesn't cost any money to develop a great place to work. If you think about places you've worked in the past, I think we all remember, wow, I was glad to get out of that place. I didn't want to work there. And we want to keep Cooperstown the place, and hey, I want to go there. Let's get people fighting to knock our door down to come here, and let's keep the best and keep it going strong. And I don't think it costs money to do that. So I think that's something we can really do in 30 seconds. That'll end. Thank you.
Don't be afraid of the 30 seconds.
Don't go over.
It's the stop sign you need to pay attention to.
Okay.
Is there another question from the audience? Yes.
Will Walker, Maple Street in Cooperstown, here representing FOMA, the Friends of Music and Art. This question is for Patrick, Mary Beth, Keith, and Bill Streck. I'm wondering how you would exercise your budgetary oversight role to ensure that we maintain a well-rounded education that includes the arts.
All right, remind me, Will, please, to whom were you addressing? That, to
Patrick, Mary Beth, Keith, and Bill.
Okay, so, Bill, you're up.
Well, sorry.
Question is about budgetary oversight.
So my personal response would be first to recognize the importance of the arts as a part of our goal in the school. And in recognizing that, then the strategies would follow, would be the way I would approach this. I don't know the specifics of the finance, and I would not want to second guess a process I don't understand. But I would say, from my personal viewpoint, it would be to understand what the arts are, why we want them, how we're going to accomplish them, and make that the opening premise. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Keith, would you answer that question, please?
I have no idea. No, it is important, and I really don't know. I would have to talk to people and listen to people that have a good answer and a good approach to that. Because in my experience, I don't know how to manage that part. So the best thing I can do is just listen to people and try to deduce the best outcome for the students, the school, the whole community.
Thank you. Patrick?
As I suppose my singing probably made clear, the school may need more investment in choral classes, but my own failure should not be taken as any sort of evidence against the curriculum. No, you know what, I guess even in a bigger picture beyond the arts and music, I think it's very important to recognize that the things that we think of as extracurricular are outside of the most core and basic mission of this school to provide reading, writing, and arithmetic. But I do not think that that makes them in any way extra to the curriculum. Because I think it's vital to recognize that not every student is going to feel completely at home in the classroom. And I think that the students who come to school because they find joy and passion on the stage or on the track or the playing field or in a shop class, that is their motivation, and that is what is going to bring them in the door and put a smile on their face and hopefully motivate them to learn something about a topic that is less naturally interesting to them. So I do think that it needs to be a priority. I don't think that your question was aimed directly at dollars and cents and how to work that in, but I guess I would say I find all of the extracurricular programs at Cooperstown to be a vital part of what the school provides for our students.
Thank you. We're ready for another question. Sorry. Oh, yes, yes, I'm sorry.
Yep. So I would say I absolutely value the arts, and one of the narratives I've long heard in this community is, concern over, sports getting the spotlight more than arts, and if we're valuing them the same, I think that we need to be very mindful of how we are valuing all things that contribute to one's education. And I think, Patrick, you spoke well to the fact that, having a variety of offerings for different students is so important. You need them to make connections and what's gonna, do that for one student versus another, as well as expose students to things that they may not even know that they're interested or have a talent in. In terms of, budgeting, that's something I think we'd have to look at. I do believe there were some changes with staffing in the last couple of years related to art and music, and I know that there's some budget proposals this year that is putting an art teacher, art program back in place, or increasing it possibly. But I think that looking at that, learning more about that, I would be interested, and then also understanding if there are concerns, what are those concerns, and assuring that that program continues to remain strong.
Yes, you may.
Thank you. So, as a board, we did have involvement, and I remember hearing your concerns about this. Well, I walked right into that when I started out in October. And there's a lot to it. And that's why I use this opportunity to bring a little bit more transparency to it as well. So as it is right now, our student enrollment is going down, and we've maintained the same level of staffing in the arts as we had prior. We did have some issues last year that I'm aware of that I think that we've overcome. But then even beyond that, beyond just our enrollment going down, we take an annual student interest survey that lets us determine what electives we have for the following year, what electives we should bring back and try again that may have been done in the past and gotten part off, or what electives we have now that maybe have less than 7 or 8 students in them that it's not fiscally responsible to do them when we could be offering electives that have more appeal to the rest of the students. So that's one of the big things right now that we're focusing on is how to build it out. And we're moving electives in, we're moving electives out. There's been a shift in interest more to the arts than from music. That requires us to make a shift in staffing as well. But I think the more important part is, I value music and the arts. I have a little artist in my household for sure. I think it creates a lot of problem-solving skills, a lot of alternate thinking. And I think the most important thing that we have right now is we've seen interest shift away from music in the high school. Really, a lot of that comes out of the elementary school. So I think the most important thing that we can do right now is ensure that we have a well-rounded arts program in the elementary school so that the students have a fair view of, art and music and build from that.
Thank you. Any other candidate wish to speak to that? Okay. Now we should be ready for another question. Yes, Joe?
I'm Joe Membrino, Lake Street in Cooperstown. I don't have a child in the system. We moved up here about 11 years ago. But I wanted to ask all of you about something that's puzzled me in your presentation. I understand competing state mandates. I understand the problem of school finance and a number of the other issues. But the one topic that you've all discussed, most of you have discussed, is communication. And I don't understand that. Is that carrying a lot more weight than just communication? What is the issue with communication? Can any of you address that in more detail?
Thank you, Joe. I'm going to ask Keith to start the question, the answering.
This is a fun question. No. The communication, as I understand it, is, there's been a lot of, through the past years, there's been some people in positions that really did not fit with our school culture, did not help build that culture. And there's a lot of frustration, mostly from the people that worked here. And it did not help the communication part. Can't think of the proper word for it, but it was a hard time for some people working here. When there was a transition in some of the administration. And it took a hit. It took a hit on the culture here. It's harder, it takes time to rebuild all that. And I think that's a lot of where the communication comes from. If people don't feel like they're being heard or appreciated, they get tired and they don't want to step up and do the extra work that they normally would do.
Thank you, Keith. Matthew, would you answer that question, please?
Yeah, so I think the big thing on communication is really where we're lacking right now is a unified front. I mean, I think there's 2 things: how we're going to get the communications out to everyone, and what it is we're going to communicate. I think in the past we've had some pretty considerable problems with not communicating when we should have, or not communicating in a timely fashion. And what happens when that comes out is small communities like ours, you get everything by hearsay, and a lot of times it's not the truth. Any parents in here know, you ask a teacher what happened, or you ask your student what happened, and you're probably going to get different answers, even if they're both means to the same lines. So I think it goes both ways. I think that, we need to both, as a school board and administration, we need to be more proactive and more thorough in what we present to the community so that they're aware of the issues and aware of what we're doing to fix them, or aware of, where we need help. And then on the other side, I think that we also need an engaged community, and an impartial engaged community. I was amazed when I went to my first couple school board meetings in October and November and December, and they were exciting ones, and we had a huge turnout. And that's the best way to get people informed. And then, over the last few months, we only have a handful, 5, 10 people there. And you kind of feel like you're going it on your own. So I think a unified front, knowing exactly what we're up against, being proactive in our communication, being timely in our communication, and making sure that we're all on the same page. Because like I said earlier, I think we do all want the same things, but a lot of times I think we communicate different messages, and it can be proactive with where we're really trying to get to.
Thank you, Matthew. Mary Beth?
I would say, if you've attended board meetings this year, certainly this fall, that, it was very clear there was a breakdown in communication, with a number of staff members, faculty and staff members speaking out and with concerns. I think, that was predictable. Anybody, that could have been seen coming, it shouldn't have been a surprise. And I think that if we are using our channels and listening and understanding what is being communicated, I think that we can prevent those things from happening going forward. I do think that, when people are not feeling heard and supported, that certainly impacts our students. They feel that. It impacts the day-to-day functioning of the district, and it's very concerning. And I think that it does spill over to community. That people do care in this community, but in that they do get involved when things aren't good. And when it is quiet, it usually means things are kind of going well. So, yes, we want people engaged and supportive, but I think the community tends to have a pretty good pulse on what's going on too, and they show up when they need to show up. And we'd love for them to show up all the time, absolutely, but I do think they're more informed and invested than just the body sitting at the board meeting will tell.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Tony, would you please answer that question?
Sure, I'll just repeat that we have really increased the openness of our communication with the liaison, with the faculty, and so much of what blew up this year, as a board member, we heard it when it was too late. So the communication has to be based on trust. If it's a we and they mentality, then we don't hear what they are thinking because they don't trust that we are them, and so, that's the biggest obstacle I think we have to get over, is that we can hear anything, and it doesn't hurt our feelings to hear problems. We need to hear problems, and it's the only way we can deal with them. And it's the same thing with the public, and with social communications being what it is. One bad whisper out there turns into a shout right away. And again, I don't know where it comes from or why, but it's pretty insidious and hard to encounter. So if you don't believe something, or you don't hear something, or something sounds right, you've got to let us know, let each other know. And the last thing I will say is that in the olden days, we used to have letters to the editor, and they were very useful, and they were very interesting for people to hear what other people are thinking.
30 seconds.
And they don't exist anymore, and they certainly, the internet is not a substitute for letters from the editor, which is much more universal. So, on we go, we're always here to listen, and please don't ever feel afraid to say anything in a board meeting or to call a board member.
Thank you, Tony. Patrick, you'd be up next. Patrick.
Well, I'd like to start by recognizing the good work that the board has already done, and when I had an issue that I felt strongly about earlier in fall and contacted the members of the board directly, I would like to point out that several of them reached out and spent actually quite a lot of time speaking with me personally about the concerns that I had, and they shared, they pointed out things I was not aware of, and I felt really went above and beyond to communicate, and that was incredibly helpful, and I wanted to thank the members of the current board for their efforts in that regard. That said, I think that it is true that the more and the sooner you communicate something, the easier it is to make change in the process. And I found, going to school board meetings last fall, there were very few people there. At some of the meetings, I think there were just a handful of members of the public who were there. And I learned about things that then became larger issues later on. And I feel very fortunate I was able to make it to those meetings. I know that not everybody can on a Tuesday evening. I think one thing that we could look at doing going forward is making the minutes of board meetings condensed into a single document that are easier for people to read. Because all that information is published online, but it needs to be accessed one page at a time, so you have to click back and forth several times in order to find out what happened at that meeting.
Thank you. Bill?
I think
Mike?
I would return to my earlier observation about the fact I never pick up the mic. No, but my earlier observation about the fact that an inventory of ideas is one way to organize an approach to problem solving. And both Matt and Tony brought up communication. I don't think the non-members of the board had seen that, but I think everybody recognizes now, after this discussion, that it is seen as an issue. So let's say we have communications, finance, demographics, technology, recruitment. Let's just take communications and subject it to an analysis and go through and try to define collectively why communications are not effective. One reason that they're not effective, as suggested by the discussion tonight, is that the board meetings are not the place for optimal communication. So maybe we should look at the way information is conveyed at the board meeting. And I'm not being critical, I'm just saying, I think this is a topic that is subject to a broad view, rather than a collection of ideas that are just shared. A more realistic, stepwise approach to how we're going to communicate. Do we need new structures? What is the approach? Who's responsible for what? Would be one way to approach this, as sort of this inventory, analysis, problem solving, because there will always be problems. And there will never be, in any organization, enough communication. So you've got to define your terms and try to execute. And I think that what we see is that we haven't quite gotten to that phase, though the problem has been recognized.
Thank you. Another question, folks? Yes? Yes? Here's your minute.
I'm Jim Hill, I live on King Street. Thank you for taking my question. So I've heard a lot about what I perceive as strengths and weaknesses, and that's fair discussion to have. But I'm also interested in what they call a SWOT analysis. I'd like the first three, Patrick, Matthew, and Mary Beth, please, talk about the threats, the long term, not immediate and not even next year, but what do you see as the threats to the district over, say, the next 5 to 10 years? And then opportunities for the other three people, if you could speak to the opportunities in the district over the next 5, 10 years. Thank you.
Okay, now, were they long-term opportunities, Jim?
Yes, long-term, yeah, long-term.
Okay, all right. So, let me just work this out. Matthew, you'd be up next, and you're in the first three to speak about long-term threats, please.
Well, I'm here for the long term, right? Because I am a first grader and I have a soon-to-be kindergartner in the fall. So that's first and foremost in my mind. I think that, the declining enrollment and the fiscal hurdles that we face are really the two big ones right now. So we've already seen enrollment declining year over year, and enrollment is expected to decline year over year for the next 5 to 10 years. So as enrollment goes down, that's also going to impact our state and federal aid, how it comes in. So less money, less students, how do we offer the same number of programs? And how do we offer the diverse offerings? Because education gets more and more expensive. Every year the number of non-English speakers we have grows. Every year the number of students that we have that have special needs girls. You know, the costs of education are increasing. And personally, I'm big on students finding fulfilling careers. And that means not just doing science and math and the same thing that a lot of us did going through school, but having the opportunities to explore, you know, all the different hundreds of areas of technology, exploring that math and the arts, and, you know, not falling into that traditional kind of way, but exploring what's out there and knowing that there's more to it and making sure that we have happy students. And unfortunately, that's gonna be expensive. So those are really the two big threats. And unfortunately, with the enrollment, it's not something that we're gonna be able to directly impact. I mean, have a campaign to have more kids, try and recruit more people in the community. You know, and with fiscal, we're at the state's thing again. So, you know, the best that we can do is plan in advance, forecast for where we're gonna be, prioritize what we wanna offer to our students, and plan based on that.
Thank you. Mary Beth, long-term threats.
So I agree with, you know, the fiscal threat and continuing to offer the high-quality programs, the variety of programs, you know, the advanced placement courses, and then you also look at language. Teachers are hard to come by, things like that. Special education is a concern, special education services. And while these are threats for our district, we actually are, you know, at an advantage in some ways compared to some of the smaller rural districts surrounding us, who also are looking at a greater loss in foundation aid. And there was a long conversation here at one point of making sure that we were well situated in the area, so that as these other schools look to consolidate or need to find solutions, that we would be a draw and we would be a place where we could, you know, offer things to continue to maintain. You know, looking at that, you know, continues to be something that we should do. I also start to look at what our seniors, you know, when you look at the destination board and where these kids are going, it's not, you know, consistently as many students going to four-year colleges anymore. The last couple of years, I've saw significantly more students taking gap years, going to various technical programs, some of them also going directly to the workforce. And there seems to be a shift in general as to where they're going post, you know, graduates. So I think looking at that and also making sure our programs are moving in the right direction for these graduates to be college and career ready as that changes. And of course, factoring in things like artificial intelligence and where all of those changes will take us.
Thank you. Patrick, you're next. Long-term threats.
Well, I don't disagree with any of the threats that we've heard here, and while I hesitate to make the world seem more gloomy, we need to provide opportunities for the other side of the table. So I'll throw some more threats out there, and I think one threat, the other piece of the demographic change is simply that when we have fewer children in school, we also have fewer adults engaged in the day-to-day things that happen around the school, whether it's the sports boosters or the PTA or the volunteers at any of the events we have here. This community has changed over the last 25 to 30 years, and the long-term trends indicate that it will continue to change, even if slowly. And so that is a great resource that the school has had, and that's a resource that's changing. So we're very fortunate to have the groups that we do have of volunteers who assist with some of the programs that we have here at school. But I do think it's getting harder and harder to do that because there are simply fewer people around to do that. That is a threat, and I would say, I think the other threat that we face that's less distinct is simply an ever-increasing interest in the state in controlling the details of how education works. I think that there are a million ways in which the state's reach into the classroom or into the handling of administration at the school, while perhaps very well intentioned, actually gets in the way of the educators that we have hired to do their job here in the school.
Thank you, Patrick. Tony, you'd be the first to address long-term opportunities.
Long-term opportunities. Something Mary Beth said struck me in a way that emphasized in my mind how constrained teachers are in what they can do in a classroom. And that is probably an enormous frustration for teachers, and it also is very constraining for what students are learning and what they're thinking about. I think it would be a way to engage creative ideas of what children can do in life. It's not just college ready, it's being life ready. And life ready means you've got to be sort of innovative, and you've got to explore, and you have to try new things, and you've got to, because that's where life remains interesting. It's not going to be, I mean, I love geometry, but,
1 minute.
you know, it's limited as to what it does to stimulate the mind. So I think the biggest opportunity is finding ways to integrate mind stimulation and imagination into education. So when they leave here, so if they go to college, they go to college. If they go to trade school, they go to trade school. If they go and hike the Appalachian Trail, but that they just are
30
exposed
seconds.
to the bigger components of life and have the means to engage themselves in it, and they'll make it in the world. They'll find their niche and they'll earn their living and so forth. I don't worry about that. And they'll find careers, those who want to, etc. But without the imagination and the drive and the self-motivation, I think we're just leaving them dry when it comes to moving ahead.
Thank you, Tony. Bill, you be next.
Jim, that was a very good question, and I was sitting here trying to think of a response that could sort of capture what we want. And I would say, after thinking about this for a few minutes here, if we view ourselves as having an opportunity, the opportunity would be to have an excellent Cooperstown Central School. Excellent, recognized as excellent, and make that our aspiration. That we think ahead, think of what the opportunities are going to be, and try to figure out our way to get to an endpoint where the Cooperstown School District is recognized in the region and elsewhere as an excellent school district by teachers, by administrators, and by those who would aspire to be as we. So I think the opportunity is in, much as Tony said, in our idealism, in our creativity, and in starting to try to think about things that could get us there. What's it going to take to have an excellent school in this environment, in this society, 10 years from now? That's our opportunity.
Thank you. Keith, you'll finish us up on long-term opportunities.
It's kind of like the thing is, you know, is the glass half full or half empty? It's our choice to look at it either way. And I always like changes. It's always an opportunity. It's not necessarily bad. Smaller student enrollment can maybe you're going to have less kids per class, and that's a good thing. You know, training kids for a different work environment. I see kids today, and I was like, wow, this is a great time to be a kid. They go through school. There's so many great job opportunities. College is one avenue. Blue-collar jobs, trade schools. You can get those jobs compared to when I was a young person. It was impossible if you wanted to be a utility lineman, like my son is. It was almost impossible to get those jobs. Now, they can't fill those jobs. They can't get enough people that can even do the physical part of it, qualify. So there's so many more opportunities today. I think it's great. You know, and change too, you have to look at, you do things differently, because how we do things today came from our past and how we do it today. It's not necessarily the best way to do things, especially for the future, so we always have to be adaptive. Like, I hurt my shoulder. All my work is physical work. I can't physically work for probably 3-4 months. Now I have to use my brains, which that's going to be a fun process. But and so I have to adapt, and I'm trying to look at it like this is a positive thing. I need to adapt. The world's changing. I need to change also. I think we can change, and we work with our people, we have great people, they can do this. So I think it's a good thing. We just have to be flexible and use our heads together, everybody together to make a good answer.
Thank you, Keith. We're ready for another question. Yes,
Hi, your name?
yes,
I'm okay, hi.
call on you.
My name is Margaret Dye, I live on Fair Street, and I have 3 girls in school here. And I just want to say, I appreciated your comment, Bill, about us being an excellent school, because I think we really should strive to be an excellent school. We have a hospital here that I work for, we have a lot of other institutions, not just the hospital, I don't need to dominate that, we have the Hall of Fame, we have a lot of other large services that we want to bring people into the community for, and I think that a school is part of it. And I know it's something that we really care about for our kids. And one thing that surprised me when I got here is the lack of language program in our elementary school. And I think we talk about that, we're losing funding, but I know a lot of other public schools in New York State have actually
I want to just
expanded
remind you
language.
to get to your question, please.
Oh, sorry. So they've expanded language, and I think that our school has actually been reducing language in the last 15 years. The language offering, we don't offer a lot of different languages. We don't have Latin anymore. We don't have German.
Okay.
We have nothing for the elementary schools. My question
Your question is-
thank you. I'm so terribly long-winded. Is do you think it's possible for us to have an elementary language program in the next 5 years? And are you willing, each of you, to ask the community to help support the cost of that? And do you think that's viable?
Okay, an elementary language program. And Mary Beth, you'll lead us off, please.
I would say I'm always willing to hear what the community has an interest in, and, certainly that is something that I think would be valuable, and I do realize, yes, there's been a reduction, certainly over the years, from the time that I was a student, where we had, a variety of options, and we got exposed to them as well as been selected. So I think that, that would have to be explored. We'd have to look, you have to look at the budget, but you also look at how would that be offered? Because I do know that there's a shortage of language teachers right now, and it's very hard to find them. So, are there ways the elementary program could be done, in other ways? And, are there, whether it be through technology, or are there other people in the community willing to come in and be a part of that, to help offer that? So I think that certainly open to that, and exploring that and looking at options and having conversations around that, as well as other things that the community might bring forth and have an interest in.
Thank you. Tony, this is for you, please.
We are presently looking at bringing language into the elementary school. We did it a few years ago, part year, and that's going to be resumed. Just going back to my own history, there was a time when there was a demand, why aren't we teaching Mandarin and Chinese? Very valid at the time. Why don't we have Latin anymore? Well, try finding a Latin teacher. Most students who took the Latin, they loved it, but, and there are constraints. You have so many credits in language that you have to present, so many credits in this, that, and the other thing. Schedules are controlled and student workloads are controlled by the state, and there's not a lot of flexibility, which does not mean you can't have some interesting integration of language. In elementary school, I think that is a wonderful idea, and I think a past principal used to have the language of the week or month, and certain words would get used, and just to familiarize. And, that's really, practically speaking, the best exposure we can have, we can offer.
Thank you. Patrick, you'd be next.
Yes, I did love taking Latin. It was a fantastic class. While programs like foreign languages in the elementary school are valuable, I think it would need to be part of an important conversation, as Tony has already pointed out, not only about how that's funded and where that comes from, but also where the time in the student's day comes from in order to provide that learning opportunity for them. It does not mean that that's not a possibility, but I think that these are the kinds of conversations that an engaged community needs to engage in with the board, to let them know how they value that and how important it is, and what other things might possibly be given up in a
think that's an attractive idea, and I don't have enough information to offer anything benefit to the group on this, whether it would be feasible. But it's an example of a question that needs a place to be resolved, as the group has discussed. When ideas like this come up, we need to have a way collectively at the board level to resolve this and communicate the results of those kind of decisions one way or the other. Because there'll be a lot of valid points like this coming from the active community.
Keith, would you address this question, please?
I think it's great to have, it's a creative idea. I don't know how feasible it would be. I think there are probably a lot of constraints in like the teachers in elementary school, the superintendent. Those would be people that really need to add in and say, hey, is this feasible? I would definitely listen to it. I love ideas. Ideas are great. And even if that wasn't, maybe it would spawn into something else that was equally as good or even better. And I couldn't possibly answer that right here today. So, but I would listen to it and entertain it, just like Mr. Streck said. We talk about things and we entertain ideas, bring the right people into the discussion, and see if it'll work or not.
Thank you. Matthew?
Yeah, I hate to be the pessimist, but I am a realist, and we are in a couple of glum situations. So I think foreign language is very important. I think the best thing that we can hope for right now is offering foreign language in the elementary school and giving strong building blocks so that when they get into the high school, that they do have opportunities to expand into different languages. You know, those building blocks like some of the vocab, conjugation of verbs, you know, things like that, so that then they can branch out. But the fact of the matter is where we're at right now, we only have 33 kids registered to go into kindergarten next year. My daughter is in first grade, they only have 45 kids. We can't offer Spanish, French, Latin, Mandarin, you know, it's just not feasible. With a single option, or I forget what they call it, we call it special, right? So whether it's gym one day, library another, you know, we don't have a lot of opportunities to split the classes out so that a class of, you know, 12 people can go and have, you know, 4 do one language, 6 do another, 8 do another, and is the drive really there? So I think the most important thing is to get either that Spanish or that French in the elementary schools early on, build the foundation. You know, again, it's a great learning tool beyond just the speaking and fluency, and then that way, when we get into the high school, really focus on the funding and expansion of the program there, where we have a lot more flexibility.
Thank you, Matt. I have a question from the audience. This writer believes that COVID gave small rural schools an opportunity. And what is that opportunity? And Tony, you'd be the first to answer, please.
I'd sure like to know what that opportunity was. I think if anything, one of the opportunities was that it invested us in having online education, which turned out to be the best we could do, but did not turn out to be very satisfying for students and parents. But the possibility of expanding online education is probably the best thing that came to us. And beyond that, I don't know, because we're still playing catch up with some of the deficits that occurred, especially in the younger grades during COVID, because the communication between students, the social interaction with each other and with teachers, those relationships really were vital and were very much missed and left great deficits, which we're still trying to catch up to.
Thank you, Tony. Patrick, you be next, please.
So during COVID, my kids were in a school district of 4, and so I may not have seen all of the opportunities that you all did.
all seriousness, I think if there's an opportunity, the opportunity was to use remote education as a window into the world of what happens inside the school. Parents, whether they liked it or not, were exposed to the material and formats that teachers were using to teach their kids. And I think that there may be an opportunity there for the school to continue engaging with parents who are no doubt very grateful that their children can return to the classroom, but still now have that deepened knowledge of what it means, the kind of work that it takes, the kind of skills that are required to educate a child, and the kinds of things that their students are learning here every day. So I think there may be an opportunity to build on that from the school and try and help parents continue their education at home.
Bill, you'd be next, please.
I think if there's an opportunity that we learned from COVID, it was an opportunity to recognize how important in-person teaching is. That's the lesson of COVID. We did get some advances in telecommunication. We had them in medicine too, but they're receding as they are in most of education for the same reason, that it's not comparable. Education is a very personal activity, requires a lot of interactions, and if the opportunity, just from this question, which I found interesting, I think the opportunity would be, I would repeat, for us just to recognize how important what we lost was and how we have to respect and work to getting back.
Thank you. Keith, please.
Almost in that situation, we learned what technologies we can try to implement. I think we were able to see how effective or not effective it was. You know, online tools were a great thing to have. Some kids thrived, some kids really didn't thrive. But maybe it's almost as important to look at what doesn't work, because that's the only way you find out what doesn't work, by trying new things. And that's okay, and maybe try to figure it out, do it differently the next time the best we can. The technology is the big part of that. If you can't be face to face, all you have is technology. And just the collective group effort to try to figure out what does work for all parties involved. It's stressful on the kids, the employees, and COVID was a unique experience, and no one knew what was going to happen. And there's a lot of changes, and sometimes almost daily. So it's hard to adapt to that, thrive in that environment. But you know, everybody stepped up as best they could. So the exact lessons, I'm not sure. We'd have to talk to a lot of different people that were more fully involved than I was. But there's a lot to learn from that. Thank you.
And Mary Beth, you'd be next. Please.
Well, you know, some of the things that I saw maybe could be viewed as an opportunity, certainly probably not worth the cost. When you look at the advancement in technology, the ability to get more people connected to the internet, we certainly saw a lot of progress there. Students who weren't anywhere on the radar to get access, who then eventually did, as well as families. There was definitely, but was a delay in the state funding. You know, we're talking about not having funding. We were looking at reductions in staff and things like that were delayed with the COVID funding that was, given over a number of years. Much needed though to make up for some of the losses during that time. And I think, we really saw that the school was more than just a place to educate, most importantly, but it really is a community center, and it really does bring the community together and provide so much more than education for our students and our families.
Thank you. Another question? Yes.
What?
Hi.
I still got the answer.
I beg your pardon, made a mistake.
I could have.
I said I would, and I did. Where did I make a mistake?
All right.
If you didn't answer that question, I believe you.
All right, anyways, yeah. So I agree with Bill wholeheartedly. I think there were a number of things that might have been viewed as an opportunity at first. I think it proved that we were adaptable to some pretty difficult situations. I think that distance learning was a good trial. I don't think that it's something that I want my elementary school children going through. I think that there was also a perceived opportunity that it gave a lot of people coming out of the city a good look at, rural life like we have here and a lot of the benefits of, small community and space to grow. Unfortunately, that was short-lived, and a lot of the people that did exit the rural areas are now moving, or urban areas are now moving back. But I think, from my standpoint, the one big opportunity that I took out of it was I got to spend a lot more time with my family, and I think it made a lot more people prioritize their families. I'm very envious of Keith getting to raise his daughters, growing up. It's a couple of years that weren't ideal, and I do have a lot of, regrets through that time, but certainly one of them was not having my kids at home every day, getting to work from home myself every day, all that sort of stuff. I think that's probably the big benefit that we got out of it, and now, people are a lot more cautious about the well-being of themselves and their children when they're sick and doing right by themselves and the people around them, so. Thank you.
Did everybody answer this question? Okay. Thank you, Matthew. I apologize. Now, yes, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, Sally Sharkey, I have 3 kids in the district and I work at the hospital. My question is really about the function of the board. I try to attend board meetings as much as I can, and sort of piggybacking on the technology issue and the language issue, I'm just curious as to what influence the board actually has on day-to-day policy within the district. Because I'm not sure, I've been here 8 years, I'm not sure that I fully understand. If I were to say, if myself or another community member had an issue that we wanted to bring, is the best forum just to do a question at the board meeting? Because it seems that when we do bring issues at the board meetings, we just get blank stares from the board, and they say, you can email us later. And I do email, and it's sort of like maybe get response or maybe not. Just real briefly, one of the things that I'd love to address is taking some of the technology out of the school, like the phones. Parents of teenagers, check out your teenagers' screen time average. You'll be appalled.
So you've asked your questions about board influence. Thanks very much. Okay. Patrick, the influence and the function of the board, please.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm trying to dissect a few different pieces of that, the influence and function of the board. Well, right, I think over the long term, the influence is great, right? I don't believe that it needs to be the business of the board to interfere in every day-to-day policy in the school. I think that's really the role of the administration and teachers who are here on the ground, but over the long term, when parents have concerns about, for instance, technology in the school, those are comments that need to be heard and considered over the longer term. Again, as I said in my sort of opening statement, I think that positive change is incremental and it's a long-term thing. And I don't know that there is a great forum for the board to hear and respond to concerns that parents have, and I think that would be something I'd be interested in cultivating.
Thank you. Bill, please.
Well, the board is not helping my candidacy. The board's fundamental role is to protect the school, to make sure it complies with all the educational requirements, to meet all the fiscal requirements. Patrick described this actually at the last board meeting as sort of the ongoing, non-dramatic, but critically essential part of protecting the school and protecting the school system. So fundamentally, that's the board's role. And then if you go to Sally's point, how does the board do all of that and then respond appropriately when all these other issues come up? And I don't have a solution for that, but I would come back to the discussion we've had here that everyone recognizes we might be looking for some better solutions for that particular issue.
You're up.
Kind of how I view the board. At the end of the day, the board's responsible good happens here, it's the people that made it happen. So the board doesn't look for credit for anything, but ultimately, the board is in charge. And you have good people that you rely on to do the jobs and give you input. We can't be in a classroom every day, we don't know. The superintendent's there, she advises the board, the other committees and whatnot advise the board. And we're trying to make the best decision we can. And at the board meetings also, I felt the same thing with, you can talk at the board. It feels like they're throwing rocks at them sometimes and they can't respond, which isn't fair. I've thought how to change that, and I don't know how you would really do that. But if you do, please let us know. So anyway, so it's the board, that's the job of the board in my view. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew?
So, yeah, on the day-to-day, I would say the board doesn't have a lot of interaction as they should. You know, we have administrators, principals, faculty, and staff that run the day-to-day. But as far as imparting change, you know, the board currently has, sorry, it's hit my bedtime. The board has committees in each of the areas. So there is a staff and policy committee, there is a curriculum committee, there is a finance and facilities committee. So really, the best way to do it, in my opinion, unless you're really bored on a Tuesday night, is to reach out and email the committee members. And it does say that on the website, exactly what it is that you're looking to have improved upon or areas of concern. The other thing is to show up at a board meeting. Honestly, if it was me, I think I would show up 15 minutes before a board meeting, or I would stay 15 minutes after a board meeting and grab someone's ear. Because like Tony said, I mean, we all want to talk to people. It's very discouraging for me, sitting up there getting Keith's questions hurled at me, and I love nothing more than to give them answers. But unfortunately, Robert's rules and the way that the board is bound and, you know, representation of the district, we just can't do that. So it's a very delayed process of, you know, ask questions of the board, we get back to you in the following meeting, and it's not ideal. But I think that's the best thing I would say, is reach out to everyone on the board. The emails are up there, our phone numbers are accessible. Leave a number at the office and say, hey, so-and-so wants to talk to you, and we'll be more than happy to give you a call back. And that's not just the existing board. I know that everyone up here feels the exact same way. A lot of us have spoken to a lot of people about issues right now having to do with our candidacies in the election.
Thank you. Mary Beth?
Yeah, the role of the board, I would say, you know, I think of district policy, setting policy, reviewing policies, budget, those types of things, approving things that, you know, the work that's being done, the day-to-day work, the oversight of that and what comes our way is, you know, certainly not going to be involved with some of those decisions that are more directly impacting, you know, parents and students. And I second what he said about, you know, making sure that you're comfortable contacting board members. There are emails, or community members, you know, and we should be engaged and approachable and have conversations with the community and parents and all of that and be hearing those things. The board meeting isn't always ideal, but I think there's value sometimes in coming forward in those meetings and stating your concerns. And then, you know, there should be, and I think there is a process where they should be following up and making sure that somebody is getting back to you with whatever is brought forth in that forum.
Thank you. Tony, please.
Academically or legally, there are two duties that the board has. It's fiscal integrity and policy. And the board meetings are, the business of the district are conducted in public. Privilege of people to speak at a board is a privilege that's granted by an individual board. There are boards that allow no public comments, and that's theirs. We would never do that. Times when we've had more attempts to exchange with people in the audience, they turn into free-for-alls, very disruptive. Nothing good is accomplished by that, and we're not going back to it. But please recognize that communication is two-way don't feel like they're being answered, call someone or call someone else if you're not getting an answer, because that is something we all agree on, is every concern brought to the board at a meeting or outside a meeting gets brought to the attention of the board in committee, gets brought to the attention of the superintendent, and some resolution and response will be generated.
Thank you, Tony. We're coming to the end of the questions from the audience. I'm going to squeak in one more question and ask the candidates to limit to 1 minute. I know that's hard, but it's valuable, I think, to us to hear one more question. This is the question. What do you think of sharing services for instruction for things like AP classes with other schools? So 1 minute, timekeeper, and our next person will be Bill Streck.
I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea. Time's up.
Okay. Thank you. Keith, next.
I also think it's a good idea.
All right, maybe we have more time. Matthew. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Keith, will you finish?
I would, yeah.
Okay, all right, Matthew.
Agreed, I think it's a great idea. With smaller school districts, exposure to more students and more ideas. So.
All right then, Mary Beth.
I think it's a good idea, but I think it needs to be considered carefully as to how it's executed, to make sure, we've always had in-person classes with the teacher here. I think that would be the ideal format. Share it with other districts, give them the opportunity. I think that's great, but I would love to see us continue to have our teachers here in person with our students.
Thank you. Mary Beth is number 5, so number 6 is
Opportunity.
Patrick.
It
What
is
did
an
you say?
opportunity.
Oh, an opportunity, okay. Well, that went well. Good, well, fine then. In the past, how many minutes?
Can I ask a question on that, just to bounce off that?
Of agreeing, you're going to ask these folks to limit to 1 minute?
Yeah, they don't, it could just be a one-word answer.
One word answer, we will allow, okay?
I'd like to give a one-word answer. It's not going to be a good idea, the last question. We have done it, exchanging with schools, teachers that work in both schools, having them communally over distance learning is a possibility. It's not highly desirable. We've tried it. We're happy to try it again, but it's just not something that seems to have play in our educational world right now.
All right, we're going to get a one-word answer from the 6 of you. Your question?
Well, just to back on that, this fall, the complaint was the number of kids in the classroom. So if we combine with other schools to give AP classes, that would make the classroom bigger. So do you still feel that joining with another school would be beneficial?
All right,
The
well,
AP class.
okay, one word, yes or no, about the numbers in classes if we combine with other schools. And Keith, you're,
Can we clarify that though? Is the assumption that the numbers are gonna be greater? 'Cause
Yes,
If
because
we're
if you're
combining-
combining, if our AP classes are already large, and that's been the complaint, is there's too many kids in the classroom. If we combine with another district for that service, what are we gonna do?
okay, so AP classes was one example. Let's use that example.
So the class size is gonna be really large.
Larger
that's what
when
we're
we
answering.
combine with other districts.
So are you still supportive of,
One word answer,
Yes or
I'm trying to decide what I'm answering too. Because
You,
if it's
everyone agreed, some with comments about sharing services with classes, specifically AP. So you said yes. Would you still say yes if the classes were larger in number?
I would say no.
Okay, your answer is no now. And Matthew?
Yes.
Still yes. And Mary Beth?
I want numbers. I
see the numbers and I wanna see, I just think there's a lot more to that
Okay.
question to
And
answer.
Tony, one word, if you can?
There is a maximum number of students that any one teacher can have under contract, and it begins and ends there.
Okay, thank you. And Patrick?
Yes.
Okay, and Bill?
Yes.
Yes, okay then. Now we're finished. I just want to sum up in the last several minutes of our conversation here, which has been extraordinarily wonderful. Just want to refresh, we have talked about the challenges going forward in our school district, the shortage of educators and administrators, how to have a culture that is seen as excellent, that would be a function in recruitment and retention. Where is the arts in the budget? Is our communication routines, is our communication culture good in the school system? Are our minutes of the board accessible enough? Two parts of the SWOT analysis, the opportunities and the threats, the possibility of an elementary language program, COVID and rural schools, was there an opportunity? And the board function and influence, and how to reach the board with an issue, and then the final one was sharing services, okay? So that's most of what we talked about. Okay, now, we'll ask for a 2-minute sum-up statement if you wish. This order was also established by draw, and Bill Streck took the #1 position. 2 minutes, Bill. Please.
Well, I'd first like to thank everyone for coming to this meeting, and I really want to take a moment to thank the current board. I've been engaged with the current board over some topics, primarily in writing. The board has always been courteous, thoughtful, and responsive. And it is clearly a job that is challenging, and one that we should all appreciate is already being executed by many of our colleagues. What I learned tonight is I have a lot to learn. If I were to become a board member, there are a lot of things that I would have to understand more clearly, much as Matthew's pointed out in a couple of his remarks. But I think that, and I think some of the things that have come up in the discussion tonight offer opportunity for different views or different approaches, or recognition of the fact that we might change an approach. I would not suggest that I know enough to outline those plans, but with the topics like communication, which has dominated a lot of this, and what we've learned is that communication is not effective at the board, and we've learned that the follow-up, although individually may be very good, there is no board response to many issues that is clearly recognized. And then we have the other questions that are there, the finance, the recruitment. I think basically we have a wonderful community, and we have a group of people who are working now. We have a group of people up here who wish to work to accomplish all these goals we share. And I would only end by saying that I think that one way to approach this is to say that our goal, as has happened in another school within this state, is to be excellent and to be known as excellent.
Thank you. Patrick, 2 minutes, please.
The kind of community engagement that we've seen here tonight both supports our local governance and it holds it to account. So whether as a member of the board or a member of the community, I look forward to continued participation in the process that shapes our schools. So I strive to be quick to listen and slow to speak. So I don't have anything more to say, but I do very much look forward to hearing from any of you have other questions of me.
Thank you. Matthew.
So I think all I wanna say, is that, as I said, I came to Cooperstown a lot more recently than most. And I had a choice, right? I came here because I liked it here. And honestly, I could leave, but I love it here, right now. And I am very satisfied and happy with the education that my daughter's received here. And I am honored to have been chosen for a role on school board that I took in October. It was enough time to get my feet wet. And I'd like to continue to pursue that further. We've seen a lot of good things happen just over the last 6 months. I see a very bright future, and I honestly would like to be a part of that going into the next 3 years. So, thank you.
Matthew. Mary Beth?
I would just like to share that throughout my career, I served in various leadership roles, and in many of these roles, there were challenges. And I prided myself on maintaining positive and productive relations with all. Students were always at the forefront of every decision. When we're all working together as a team in the best interest of students, we can always find a positive road forward and accomplish great things. I'm committed to having open, honest, respectful, and productive conversations, working with all constituents, community members, organizations, parents, administrators, faculty, staff, and students to build and maintain positive relationships. That's one of the biggest priorities for me. When we are a team, CCS flourishes and the students benefit. I believe in being fiscally responsible, maintaining high-quality education programs, supporting all learners, and ensuring that CCS students and employees are in a safer environment each day. There are many challenges we face. Many of them are not specific to Cooperstown. As a board, we would need to continue to work with the district, state, and local resources to determine the best path forward and to make sure it's done with input from all stakeholders and with transparency. I'm passionate about this work and would be honored to serve as a Board of Education member with the best interests of students at the forefront at all times. And I just want to thank you all for coming out tonight and being informed and engaged community members.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Tony, please.
I would start by reminding that someone had said this is a thankless job. It is not a thankless job. I found that the associations I've had with teachers and parents and students and bus drivers and maintenance people, where they become more personal engagement type people who are friendly toward me and I'm friendly toward them, that's enormous in and of itself. And knowing that the reputation of this school has always been people who visit it comment on the behavior of students in the hallway, how polite they are, how well engaged they seem. That to me is all the thanks I ever need. I was part of a community advisory group before I came onto the board, and I would like to see if that wants to come out again, that we have a community advisory group with all volunteer people who meet on their own. It seems like it would be a place, a sounding board for community people to say what they want to say, and et cetera. And that the mission statement, I was on a community group that we formed that mission statement. There were about 16 of us. Every word of that was parsed over a period of probably a half a year, and I still believe every word in it. And that calls for excellence and calls for Cooperstown being a model for the region and for rural schools. And I stick to that and bug the board every year to remember that.
Thank you, Tony. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I made a mistake again.
I was hoping you would miss that. Thank you for the evening. This was, it actually turned out to be fun. I was a little nervous about it. I've never done this before, and I'm not the most eloquent speaker like most of the other members are. I feel after tonight really good moving forward with our school. There's really just great candidates here. I mean, we're going to do well. There's a lot of opportunity. Change, I do believe, brings opportunity. Hard times, yes, but it is opportunity. do my best to keep an open mind and to listen to people that have different ideas, good ideas, or not good ideas, from the employees that work in the district that make it all happen, to the parents, to, good idea is a good idea, others should be entertained. So that's what I can do, and if that is something that you would like to see me do for you, I would be honored to go. Thank you.
So, I certainly want to thank these candidates, and thanks to the audience, and ask your forgiveness for this flawed moderator, who, out of fairness, because the league is just so monomaniacal about fairness, that I have to keep track of who has started and who ends, and then shift it over one, so you may have picked that up, maybe you didn't. So, thank you all for making this a very valuable and participative event. The vote includes the 2024 district budget, a vote for the members of the school board, a school bus lease proposition, and the public library tax proposition. The budget for 24-25 is available on the district website. The vote is Tuesday, May 21, from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. in the senior high school. Is it room 304 and 305?
It is Sterling Auditorium.
Thank you. In the Sterling Auditorium, we have it on good authority. Any citizen 18 years of age or older who has been a resident of the district for 30 days preceding the election is qualified to vote. Absentee ballots are available at the district office. Contact Maria Field, 547-5364. Thank you all, and good night.